Welcome back to the Catchpole home studio. As you can tell, it's getting further and further into lockdown and my hair is getting gradually more and more wild, the beard slightly more unkempt. Anyway, today we wanted to talk to you about the Chiron Pur Sport because we got some new footage of it testing around a track called Bilsterberg, more of that in a bit, and we also got some, we asked some questions to the head of chassis development at Bugatti, so we've got a bit more of an insight into this car, and rather than just putting the footage out there, we thought we would have a look at it and see what we could sort of divine from the various things that we've seen, have a really sort of drill down into what we can expect from this car perhaps sort of after we've seen it testing. So with no further ado, I should probably reintroduce, give you a bit of a potted summary of what the Pur Sport is, just in case you haven't seen it. We have done a full walk around. There is a link in the description below to that film where I sort of walk around and talk about all the details, but a bit of a recap first. So this is a Chiron that is unshackled by the need to try and reach an absolute sort of world-beating VMAX, if you like. So the top speed has come down from over 260 miles an hour down to just 217 miles an hour, or 350 kilometers an hour, and that allows them to do all sorts of things, which we'll get to in a bit. It's going to cost over 3 million euros plus taxes, and they're only going to build 60 of these cars, so it's going to be fairly rare and extremely expensive. Whether many will end up on track, who knows? Hopefully quite a lot will. Anyway, lots of new aero on there. It's going to weigh 50 kilos less, but more importantly, 16 kilos of that, or 19 kilos is unsprung, 16 kilos is unsprung and rotational mass that they've managed to save. 65% stiffer at the front, 33% stiffer at the rear in terms of the suspension. Power and torque figures, they are unchanged, so it is still the same W16 quad turbo engine in there, and it's still 1,471 brake horsepower and 1,180 pounds-foot of torque coming out of it, but it's quicker to 62 miles an hour. It's not faster, but it's quicker, so it's 2.3 seconds to 62 miles an hour now, and 5.9 seconds to 124 miles an hour. And part of the reason for that is the gearing. So here is Bugatti's head of chassis development, and I'm going to try and say his name now, Jochen Schwalbe, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the reasons for that, because it's all about the gearbox.
The vision of the gearbox, of course, was to adapt the gearbox and the transmission to this new range of speed, because we limit the speed to 350, and of course if you just compare Chiron running at 350, you have a very low rev in the 7th gear, so we just decided to make even this big step to change the complete inner life of the gearbox and make the new transmission, the transmission of the gearbox fitting to the new range of speed. That means now we have again 7 speed, but now in the range of speed from 0 to 350 instead of 420. And this means also for track performance, you really have closer gears. That means you have the perfect gear in every turn, and it doesn't matter in which turning circle you get, it's always the best gear. That's perfect.
So that's a little bit more about the gearing. The other big thing that they're trumpeting is the Esp Sport setting. So on the steering wheel down here, there's a lovely oily switch, and all the way around, that's the sort of the full-on mode. And now that they're saying that it's going to be an easy car to drift, potentially. So anyway, here's Jochen again to talk us a bit more about that.
The Esp Sports Plus mode is really made for easy drifting, and especially the difference from the Chiron to the Pure Sport is then, together with this new compound of the tire and the overall situation with the gearbox, makes also this transition from grip to drift easier to control by throttle. So this was also one of the major ideas behind. That means this transition is what you can feel and control, and therefore you can really realize different driving styles, like you want to do it from spectacular to lap time orientated driving. You can do a lot of things with this car.
So there we are. That's a little bit more about the Esp Sport and the drift. I slightly object to the word drift because it just feels slightly, I don't know, it's become overused. I like to think of drifting as the sort of, you know, Maserati 250F on cross-ply, sort of on all four wheels, sort of drifting across the road. But drift is now more Ken Block and big sort of smoky, you know. Anyway, perhaps the Chiron will be like a Nissan 200SX with a welded rear diff, but I suspect it's more sort of, you know, it's lateral slip, isn't it? Really, oversteer if you want. But anyway, we'll have a look at it on track in a minute and see that. Mention the tyres there as well. Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2s on this, and they're going to have a tricky job because they've gone up in grip by, I think, about 10%. But as he was saying, they've also got to be more progressive so that you want a tyre that's going to help you, because this is quite a demonstrably turbocharged car. Certainly the normal Chiron is, and in a car where you've got a lot of boost coming in, you have, if it breaks traction, you have to sort of ride out the slide, because just backing off the throttle, it'll tend to just sort of keep going that fraction longer. You can't play with it in the same way that you would with a naturally aspirated engine, certainly not when you've got these sort of, you know, big turbochargers and all that torque coming in. So you need a nice progressive tyre. If you've got a snappy tyre with really sort of not very progressive boost, so you've got both things, it fires up the rear wheels and they snap, then you're in a whole world of trouble. So yes, the progressive nature of it is going to be key to being able to drift or oversteer this Chiron Pur Sport and use that turbocharged torque on the exit of corner. Anyway, a few words about the track that you're about to see and where they were testing, which is Bilsterberg, which is in the north of Germany, in an area called North Rhine-Westphalia, and it was built fairly recently. It only opened in 2013, I think. I went there in 2015 as part of the 991 Gen 1 GT3 RS launch, so the purple one, as most people now remember it. And it's an extraordinary track. It's 4.2 kilometres long, so it's 2.6 miles, and it has 19 corners within that. It was designed by Hermann Tilke, who he's probably more familiar to most of you as the person that designs most of the modern Formula One tracks, which get an awful lot of criticism for being pretty dull. This is completely different. It's like a mini Nürburgring. The consultant on this track alongside Tilke was one Walter Roll, so that perhaps explains a little more about why it's so fabulous. It has something like 200 meters of elevation gain within one lap, and it's 70 meters between the highest point and the lowest point. It's just a proper roller coaster of a ride, this circuit, and it's built on the site of an old NATO ammunition dump, sort of right in the middle of this forest. It's a private track, and it's not used for any racing, but it is utterly brilliant. So that's a bit of a word about the track you're about to see, and I'll talk you through certainly a section of corners as well, which they use quite a lot in the film. So what can we learn from this footage? Let's have a look. First up, there are seemingly 3 cars at Bilsterberg, 2 test cars, and the car that I did the walk around of, which is the sort of show car, which is the blue and bare carbon car. You can see one of the test cars has got just the standard magnesium wheels on it. It's standard, beautiful magnesium wheels on it, but you can optionally have these sort of carbon fibre turbofan sort of bits, inserts in them. So the other car's got those. So testing both wheel setups there as well. One of them's also got, you can see marks above the arches at one point. Don't know what they mean, but you can also see the equipment on top of the engine for calibration and taking readings and all that sort of thing. Also from the side, you can see just how pronounced that new rear diffuser is. It's got a very short overhang at the back, the Chiron, and it really sticks out, this diffuser, to obviously make the most of accelerating that air out of the back. First dynamic tracking shot of the car, and instantly they put in a shot of this car oversteering on the exit of the corner. It's not a big slide, but it's definitely oversteering. Nowhere in this can I see any sort of big smoky drifts, but equally you can see the car, it's really aggressively sort of, it's mid-corner, it's oversteering quite a bit. They're keeping the slides on quite a short range. So here it is again, you can see it through the corner. It's moving around there. As I say, the drivers are obviously keeping it on a fairly short range because you've got all this mass. So this car is, let's say, 50 kilos lighter overall, but it's still over 1900 kilos in weight, and you've obviously still got that engine and gearbox, which are the big big bit of the car that you're trying to stop, you know, having inertia and momentum through the corner, and stopping that swinging on the exit of the corner is the really tricky thing. And this circuit is tricky to control that sort of mass as well. The onboards are fascinating. So if you have a look at this onboard, a couple of things. I'll let you watch it and then we'll have a look at it. So the thing that I really took away from that onboard is just, well, it's the gearing. You can hear how quickly the car is ripping through those gears. It's obviously being teased all the way through that section, and they've used that a couple of times. You can probably see that both angles are in fact sort of looking at the driver and then looking out through the dashboard. That's the same section of track, and it's turns 11, 12 and 13, so it's a sort of Amen corner, if you like, which is that's a golf reference, not a Welsh rock band reference. And it's an extraordinary section because you come into this first left-hander and it's over a little crest, so that sort of gets the car light, might help you rotate as you go over the crest, but then the whole thing just falls away really steeply. So that's where, again, you don't want to get it too light and rotating too much, because otherwise you've got all this weight sort of just falling away from you. Down to the bottom, and 11 and 12 are sort of all one corner really, but once you get onto the flat section you can accelerate, so you hear that in the film, and then but you're still turning left, so you've just got to be a bit patient with the throttle. You can't just absolutely mash it through there. And then you go through a slight compression just as you go uphill, because it's in the sort of the mid-20s, I think, the gradient up here, and it sort of goes up in steps, and then you get up to this top and it's a blind right-hander over a crest really quick. Again, the car's going light, you're turning at the same time, so it can sort of help rotate, but it just feels like it wants to run away from you, and you want to get the car back across to the other side of the track again for the following left. So it's a really complicated, fascinating but tricky section of track. And for a car, as I say, that's got the mass, this is not a circuit to send a Chiron to unless you really mean business. There are plenty of other easier tracks they could have chosen. Silverstone or something, Hockenheim, I suppose, in Germany would be much easier, because it wouldn't be sort of dealing with all these elevation changes. Even Spa, I think, just because it's a bigger track, haven't got the bumps. It's got something like 44 different crests and dips or troughs in a single lap, this circuit. So it's really just, the car is constantly busy, and it doesn't really get time to settle, I suppose. That's important because they say they are going to go to the Nürburgring after this, and so you're certainly going to have to deal with all that sort of thing there. So you might as well go to the mini Nürburgring first. So there we are, that's the footage. What can we gather from it? Well, it certainly looks really agile on turn-in. Nose gets into the corner, and it's obviously, as I felt with the normal Chiron, you can then load up that outside rear tyre very easily, even more in this case, and it's just got more bandwidth, I suppose, that you can play with it within that. As I say, I still think they're keeping it fairly well reined in because of just all that mass working, but it does look pretty exciting, I have to say. I'm clearly going to have to stock up on brave pills before I drive it. They have promised that I can drive it at some point, so I will be looking forward to that. What time will it do around the Nürburgring? Who knows? Place your bets now. For now though, I think that's about it. Go and watch the other film if you want to know all the other geeky details about this car, so link is in the description below. And there we are. The acceleration does look mad as well, doesn't it? Down that back straight, long back, downhill back straight, it just seems to eat it up. Let me know if you enjoyed that. Did you enjoy this sort of video? Would you like us to do more news type videos? Sort of, do you want me to read out the spec of the latest Golf GTI, or is that a bit book at bedtime? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you on the channel again very soon.